Okay, now that we are able to record, we'll call the meeting to order at 10:02 or 4. And the minutes will reflect that all three members of the Finance Committee are here, along with the village manager and the clerk. We're open for public comment. Barb, if you have anything to add, you can unmute yourself. Otherwise, we'll just proceed to old business. So any progress on the depositor designation resolution?
I have not, I'm sorry. Yeah.
With all the spare time you have.
Yeah. You know, I think where we left off was really just making sure we captured what banks and what new banks. So Jim and I haven't had a chance to get together, discuss that.
Yeah.
We've been doing lots of other things. So, yeah, keep it on the agenda and we'll get through that.
Yeah.
Because I think it's as we're moving into the new budget and potentially hiring new staff, it'd be nice to have that cleaned up. So, yeah.
Question on, with the adoption of the 4-month budget, do we want to do the fee schedule at that time? Didn't we just identify something else that we needed to add? We wanted to adopt a fee schedule with the budget, and whether we adopt it with the 4-year budget, which we have to present next month,
right?
Or whether we for the 4-month,
It's an amendment that we're going to be doing.
We'll be amending the current budget, adding 4 months.
To add 4 months to it.
Right, so we'll end up auditing a 16-month period.
Yeah. So maybe it makes more sense to have the fee schedule linked to the new fiscal year budget and have all of the changes ready to go at that time.
In July?
Or
the 4 months time?
You'll actually approve it
in by
May or
June.
June.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What was the addition? Because I did draft a fee amendment.
The one last month?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's those.
Oh, that's just
It's that.
the ones that. Okay.
There isn't new ones, right? I don't think
Right,
so. I think it's just the ones you already did.
It came up.
Oh, okay.
But that didn't get approved, right? That just.
Correct.
Yeah, it's just being held.
Okay.
Waiting. I think that's what it is.
You know, I guess we can do it either way. We're getting into the building season and having the amended fee schedule in place that makes clear that there's escrow accounts.
Yeah, that's the main thing. It's just making sure that the escrow applies to everything, because then that will stop the bleeding for when we have projects that are way more than the fee.
There's no reason why we couldn't do it at the next meeting.
Yeah, and Joni had
then
already
do it again in May or June.
As a whole.
As a whole,
you already had the resolution drawn up to amend the fee schedule, so if we can get that on the February agenda.
And I don't think there's anything that was changed from the draft last month. It's waiting.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of interesting that we had never had a rezoning request in the history of the village, and so it didn't have a fee, and now we have like 2 people that want to do it. Right?
We have had a rezoning request.
We had. We just didn't have it on the schedule.
You know, we requested, we rezoned some property out in D1.
Okay. We must have just given them a fee and not put it on the schedule then.
No, I think they just asked and we did it.
I just think it's funny that we finally get around to putting it on, and then all of a sudden people are.
You did receive a $500.
It's on there now. We just added it though this last cycle because I realized it was missing because I was just I was trying to go through other places. I just think it's interesting that it happened
now
after.
We have
I know a whole bunch.
So.
It's an option.
Yeah.
So, do you want to walk us through the proposed 4-month budget?
Yeah, actually, Jim, I'll let you start off if you want.
Yeah, we'd kind of like to move down to 4A, or excuse me, actually, where would we be on this?
4B,
For the other new
4B
business.
other.
but it coincides.
Yeah, Joni and I have been talking quite a lot about staffing, and obviously with the retirement of Cindy as treasurer, that made that very critical. But the one thing that I've definitely noticed in the last 90 days is in terms of administrative staff, we're very much understaffed. And we're going to present to you today a proposal that Joni and I have worked on really for the last 2 weeks to really add one full-time equivalent employee as administrative staff. And we'd be doing that by making the currently part-time treasurer position a full-time position, and then adding a part-time administrative assistant position. And the budget proposal, the document you have before you titled Budget Proposal for Full-Time Treasurer Position with today's date, kind of lays out the rationale and then how we would propose to, to fund that in both the budget extension, the 4-month budget extension, and the full 2024-25 fiscal year budget. And since Joni did the bulk of the work on the financial aspect of it, I'm going to let her kind of run you through the rationale in the proposal.
Okay. I've been sitting in my sauna lately. I sat in it last night, and I find that it's really great, but then you're super dry in the morning. So I'm like, water. As Jim just mentioned here, that we are looking, he's looking to hire potentially a full-time treasurer. And so what I did was try to lay out a summary of how the village would do that. So this proposal recommends the transformation of the current part-time treasurer and part-time administrative assistant position into a consolidated full-time treasurer role within the village of Northport. This change is proposed in light of the organization's expanded responsibilities and budget for the fiscal year for 2024-2025 that we'll be working on. So since we're kind of in limbo, we decided we'll lay out the details of that, because as we mentioned earlier, we will be amending our current budget. So our current part-time position for the treasurer, we've laid out the annual salary is currently $28,391, and that position also collected an additional $7,000 for work for the NLT Way Board as treasurer, I would say, kind of via that position, collecting revenues. So that is a total of $35,391. We laid out there that the Finance Committee, Village Council had approved the position, administrative assistant position, at a budget of $20,000. And then we laid out what that actual cost would be and what is expected, if you were to hire someone on a part-time basis. And the estimate was $25,000 to $30,000. Currently, we wanted to lay out our general fund budget. Our total budgeted revenues was $738,772. That's what we budgeted. But we're projected to come in much higher than that at this time. Not $15,000, but that is something to talk about. And so we've captured that, $15,642. And we have another month left, so we'll see where those marijuana tax revenues come in at. Then we move into section 3, which is our projected financial growth. In conversations with the township, equalization, we're estimating a 5% increase. Well, and Jim and I had a lengthy conversation about it. We're estimating a 5% increase in real property tax revenues, which would generate an additional $27,600 for the 2024-2025 fiscal year budget.
I want to emphasize, that's not an increase in the tax rate, but an increase in when the rate is applied to the increase in valuations. So I don't want to get people thinking we're talking about raising taxes by 5%, because that's not the case.
It's a great point.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thought I'd throw that in at the top rather than at the end.
So we have some rationale, which I know you can all read that, for considering to consolidate this position. But then I just kind of captured the proposed budget. So the proposed budget for this position is 50 to 60,000. Projected benefits for that position, it's about 20%, so 13 to 15,000, with a total of 75,000 to create the budget. That's the impact.
Upper end.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the impact,
Mhm.
yes.
And the point of discussing our 2023-24 revenue projections and the 2024-2025 growth is we think that the difference between our current part-time position and the expected full-time position could be funded largely by that without dipping into any of the contingency or, we just think that's how that can be funded.
Right. So this position would be funded amongst all of our funds, our general fund, our water fund, streets, and marina, as reflected currently in the treasurer's role. We wanted to point out that our current budget, and we did a comparison. So we have the total benefits for the treasurer just on the general fund. So this is not including the NLTUA budget. So including part-time benefits is $30,000 for 345. The proposed budget is $75,000 for this full-time position. So the difference is $44,655. As we just discussed, where we're proposing to get the additional revenues is our general fund budget. We're estimating that 5% increase for 2024-2025 budget, which will generate $26,942. I'm sorry, $27,600. And we are estimating that this current budget will bring in an additional $26,942. So to capture that as a whole, we're anticipating an additional $54,542 in revenues just to our general fund, above what we had budgeted for the current year.
Okay, you mentioned that this didn't include the NLTUA.
That's correct.
Is the plan still for the village to contract, or for the NLTUA to contract with the village, and so we'll fund the position?
We didn't, since that's an unknown, we didn't include that. But yes, there would be some aspect of that. I would think somewhere between maybe even more. And I'm not sure. It's hard to speak for NLTUA, and I'm sure even Chris can't do that. But the current $7,000 is going to be somehow distributed between the township and the village, based upon that each is doing. But yes, that's still the plan. But we haven't, because that's an unknown, we haven't figured that into that particular component of the presentation.
So any additional expense associated with that will be offset by township.
Yeah, and because the justification, suggests that we're actually approximately $10,000 are projected, yes. If I thought that we needed that to make the justification, I would have included it. But if anything, that will create something more of a cushion, and possibly a contribution to what we end up proposing as the contingency at the end of the 4-month and future 12-month budget.
So I'll just read this to you. The transition to a full-time treasurer will result in an increased expenditure of $44,655. However, this increase is more than offset by the projected additional revenues totaling $54,542. This figure includes the actual increase in the 2023-2024 budget fiscal year and the anticipated increase in the general fund revenues for the 2024-2025 budget. The anticipated net financial impact is expected to be neutral or slightly positive, ensuring that the transition to a full-time position is financially sustainable, which was my biggest concern, while contributing to the village's overall financial stability. And we'll talk about that on the next page. So this transition to a full-time treasurer is posed to significantly improve the village of Northport's financial management, yielding benefits such as enhanced budgeting efficiency, better financial oversight, and improved segregation of duties, which are crucial for accountability. Additionally, this move is expected to stimulate greater revenues through effective financial strategies. The consolidation of the treasurer and administrative assistant role into a single full-time position will also lead to strategic reduction in administrative overhead, contributing to long-term operational efficiency and streamlined financial leadership. The transition supports the village's goals to sustain financial health and strategic resources alike. Because I did not number these and it printed on both pages, I think I'm going in the right direction here.
I think you are.
Okay. So we wanted to talk about our current budget a little bit, just to give you an idea of where these increases are coming in. So our current budget and contingency plan, as you all remember, and as I've been working through the budget, the Village of Northport is currently projecting an expense budget surplus for the fiscal year of 2023-2024, estimated to be between $25,000 and $30,000. Jim and I reviewed the budget and have determined this. It will give you a full report.
So in essence, we're projecting both a decreased revenue and a decrease in projected expense budget. That's want to, that's the best situation to be in, to have both of those going in the right direction.
Yeah. This surplus indicates efficient budget management and a potential for reallocating funds to other strategic areas or reserve funds. Our current contingency, so the contingency that we set, contingency amount of $75,102 is proposed in our budget, our current budget that we're just about to amend. This allocation is designed to cover unexpected and unforeseen expenditures, providing a financial cushion to ensure operational sustainability. The specific expenditure included in the contingency is an embarked amount for the unexpected expenditure of the Department of Public Works. So this, what we're projecting to be a surplus, also includes, we've already expended the amount for the unexpected boiler, and that amount was $12,480. So what we're trying to show to you is that the village has, obviously incurred some unforeseen expenses. However, we're still maintaining our contingency, and if everything, doesn't collapse on us, knock on wood, in the next month, we're expecting the surplus of $25,000 to $30,000 in our expenses.
Did that come from like one specific area or just kind of spread out throughout the budget?
Through the entire budget.
Yeah, so this is focused just primarily on our general fund, because
Okay.
that's where we had our contingency built in.
Okay.
We have smaller contingencies for all the other funds, water, and marina, and some for the streets. This 75,000 was, and the surplus and expenses is focused primarily on the general fund. It is.
Based upon the analysis that we've done, we believe that we'll be able to maintain a contingency of at least that amount, possibly even a little bit more for the 2024-2025 budget, even with the two proposals we're presenting today.
Yeah, it's been a lot. Jim and I running numbers.
It took a bit to convince Joni that this was possible, but then she really she really jumped right in and crunched the numbers in a way that I'm not yet prepared to do because I haven't been working with them for, as long as she has, but,
Well,
so it was a good team.
we had a good little work bee there and putting this together, and I apologize, it runs together smooth in our heads, and when you go back and look at this, it does kind of jump around. However, we're trying to show you where we are going to continue to have, stability in our revenues and how we can fund this position, so.
I mean, so far it's making sense.
I think it's
to me.
great. I don't think there's a problem. I think you did a great job. I have one question before you keep going, just so it's not me backtracking. But I do know that DPW hasn't done the 2 hydrants. I've talked to Jim about it. And they haven't done the visitor center work, and both of those were budgeted. And is the visitor center in the general fund? So that might be part of this number.
Yeah.
That's in parks, so is that a different fund and, or it's
No,
within general?
yeah.
Okay, so that's part of it, because I do want to be sure that that project still gets to happen and we aren't using up that money on something else. Is the hydrants a water fund probably?
It
So
is.
it's a different fund,
Yeah.
okay. I just want to be sure we're not using those, because one of the things that Jim had said, because in infrastructure, we discussed that the hydrants can't actually be completed before the budget cycle ends because of the timing and they can't do the work in the winter, et cetera. And I want to be sure that those hydrants, that we actually double the budget so that we can do 4 next year instead of just, again, going, oh, we didn't do it because there's 20 that need to be done. The more we keep delaying this, the harder it is to get them done before they fail. So I want to be sure that instead of 14,000, it's 28,000 for the next budget cycle.
Yeah.
And I just want to be sure we weren't using up that money.
Well, we're
is
going
all.
to talk about the water fund here
Okay,
next.
okay.
And so,
But the discussion regarding the water fund will not result in a reduction of actual projects. It's all how we allocate revenue, really,
yeah,
not expenses, but revenue.
Okay.
We're focusing on that.
so, yeah, and I have spoke to the water, now we have 2 water operators.
I know, which is
And,
really awesome.
And they have some expenses and things that they want to talk to Jim and myself about. I have to get some water. And for the upcoming year,
Yeah.
testing and different things. So we will certainly keep our eye on that. And, with the rate study that's going to happen, that's, I'm looking forward to that, as I know you all are.
Yes.
Yeah, and none of the discussions that we had regarding projections concerning the water fund really take into consideration any increase, and that study might indicate
Yeah,
is necessary.
Right.
which I'm sure probably is, but yeah.
Okay, so so Jim is considering, and I know that we've talked about a second part-time position, so an additional proposal for hiring a part-time administrative assistant. In tandem with the transition to a full-time treasurer, the village manager proposes hiring a part-time administrative assistant. This role is crucial to support the expanded administrative workload and to ensure efficient operations within the village. To facilitate this addition, we need to consider potential reductions in other expenditures. So Jim and I got together and we took a look at the budget. And so here, number 7, potential funding sources. Trash pickup. That is something that we do on an every other year basis. Although we did not consider this to be an expenditure reduction in our proposal here, it's something that we need to talk about and consider the finance and the council as a whole.
Right, and we decided that it's something you should look at largely because it's one discretionary area in the budget. We're not proposing it be eliminated by any means, but, and as you'll see, when we talk about the financial justification for the part-time position, we don't include any reduction in that line item, but we think it's something you ought to take a look at. If not again, not suggesting eliminating it, but are there ways to control the expense that is incurred? That's really the issue.
Yeah, one of the things I had brought up before, I mean, I'm sure Joni told you, it used to be every year, and it was switched to every other year with quite a bunch of fanfare because there was a lot of commentary. But one of the things that I had owned property in Traverse City, and they have switched theirs to where you have to bring everything to one location. And then Shawbytown last year, for the first time ever, they did the same thing. It's no longer just at the end of drives. And I'm quite confident that has to be to reduce costs, because instead of them having to send trucks everywhere and they're picking everything up, you have to go and drop it off. And like the Shawbytown one, of course, and the one that I've gone to in Blair, they have hugely long lines. And that, my guess, also reduces the amount of waste, because you have to be a lot more dedicated if you're gonna go and take your trash and sit there and wait in line. But again, if you really need the service, it's still there then, but not necessarily like everybody and your uncle and your cousin are all bringing their trash to the end of your driveway because it's the free day.
So,
I agree. I definitely, if there's a way to preserve, on-site end of driveway pickup, I would prefer that, because that's what's considered the most convenient. But we definitely need to get away from this idea of, as you say, everybody from.
Well, and you can say you can't do that, but people do it anyway, because like, obviously, how do you know that it wasn't that person's trash?
Well,
Like,
Or the amount. We
Yes.
had a conversation about the
Yeah.
amount.
There are
that's
ways, there are ways to eliminate that. But the problem is, particularly if we do it on a contractor basis, and they are incentivized by the total amount picked up. If our bill is based upon the total amount picked up, they're gonna take everything. They're gonna wanna take everything. If there's a way to incentivize that in the other way, in the other direction, we'll consider that. But again, we mention that because most everything in our budget is really not that discretionary. It's only a question of, are we going to do it now or later, rather than are we going to do it at all. There's virtually nothing in our budget that I would consider to be excess or fat or discretionary. This is about the only thing. So you need to take that into consideration. That's all.
So one of the areas that we looked at was our attorney fees. Based on our current needs, we can reduce our current budget for this line item by $10,000. The budget is 25, so we would be taking it down 15. This reduction reflects a strategic approach to legal expenditures, ensuring the legal services are utilized effectively and efficiently.
And that really kind of reflects the discussion that I had in my interview process, that I definitely did not want to have, and I didn't think it was appropriate for me to have the position of village attorney as well as village manager and zoning administrator. But I also did say that there were routine matters that are now being referred to legal counsel that I would be able to handle.
certainly contract
Absolutely no.
review and,
All of that kind of stuff with no problem at all, and we believe that that reduction can be adequately sustained. Now, of course, if we end up in the middle of a unexpected litigation that is not insured, for example, that we need a budget adjustment. We think routine can be handled with that reduction.
yeah, I think that was certainly something that the council kept in mind as well.
So position budgets, and I'll read this and then Jim, you can explain a little further if you want. Position budgets is a consideration. Create position budgets that show how each position is allocated amongst the various funds. This will permit better management of their time and show the actual amounts paid to each employee. This information will help to manage overtime and the use of part-time employees. So we had a big discussion about this yesterday.
Yeah, essentially, what I consider to be a position budget would be to take all those that you would, as council, authorize a certain level of full-time equivalent employees, okay? And based on that, we have an overall budget effect of what our employment costs are. then they get broken down by which funds fund those positions. So you will have as a management tool, both as a council and us as staff, a tool that will look at you to say, you're paying substantially more in this position than you have actually allocated because of the way it's been managed. And this way will give, again, both council and our managers the ability to really understand how their decisions regarding allocation of hours for part-time employees and allocation of overtime really impacts the budget. So this is really not a savings necessarily in and of itself, but we think that using it will allow better management and ultimately savings in the future.
And this is something that trustees have been trying to quantify for as long as I've been on the council.
Yeah, it's the one thing when I looked at the budget that I saw lacking, it's we're gonna create that for you so you'll have it. So just for your information and better management.
Yeah, I certainly understand the rationale in allocating across different departments funds, but yeah, having it one-stop shopping.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, when Jim started talking, I was like, oh, whoa, this sounds like a lot. He's like, no, it's not really.
And
so we had this.
The first time you do it, it is a little bit, but really all you're doing is taking how each fund is budgeted and grossing it up into a separate budget that allows you to allocate, to know how your decisions regarding employment are impacting the management of the village.
Yeah.
And it also, and without putting too fine a point on it, it also gives me a tool to say to a manager, you're not doing your job. You're not managing your position budget the way that you should, or you're doing a great job.
Yeah.
It's a good way to evaluate. It's a good way to evaluate managers.
Okay, so the next item is our water fund adjustments. In recent years, the salaries in the water fund have remained flat, largely due to limited revenue streams. This stagnation has been a necessary measure to maintain the fiscal balance in light of the revenue constraints, which we all know. You know, the minimum charges to our users has remained flat for many years. So our current budget is $56,256 for water operators and staff in the 2023-2024 budget. Our proposed increase is $75,000. That increase will generate $18,744, and that will be something that we will work into the rate study.
And even
it could be
without
something different.
Without the rate study,
Yeah.
Basically reallocating the water fund budget, and I promise it will not impact hydrants, but
right.
We're working the water fund budget in a way that permits us to increase the current salary portion from 56 to 75,000.
And this might eliminate some of the overtime associated
That's
with
the idea.
Yeah.
That's exactly the idea.
With the position budgets.
That's exactly the idea. Yes.
Yeah.
And again, better management through position budget.
Well, and having two water operators will help too, because then you have two people that can be called out for those things.
You don't have,
instead of one that is pushing them to overtime.
Yeah, and with the position budgets,
Right.
We could, there's some creative scheduling so that coming in on Saturday isn't over.
Yeah.
Right. So just looking over the budget for that we're going to be amending and proposing here, we know that our marina fund revenues will increase also. So this is something to consider because these positions are paid over all of our funds. So the marina fund is increasing their seasonal slip rate by 6%. The additional revenue of $15,076 $775 is projected. This increase could partially support the additional administrative staffing costs. The next item is Leelanau Township contribution. The Village of Northport has requested the Leelanau Township Board to consider contributing $10,000 to $20,000 towards a new part-time administrative assistant position and make the position provide joint support to the township and the village activities, and also extend the hours of the township services its residents. This highlights local commitment and inter-community support.
Yeah, I've actually already had some discussions with the township supervisor regarding this. Although we haven't gotten to the point of actually putting, creating a contract to do so, he's supportive of the idea because it will permit, essentially what we would do is hire that part-time administrative assistant would also answer phones that will be transferred from the township to here and provide that administrative support for them. And they're also closed on Fridays. We're open on Fridays until 1 o'clock, so we'll add another day that people can make contact with the township and fund it in a way that that makes sense. And one of the things I really want to emphasize is cooperations between the various levels of government. I just had a gentleman in my office yesterday that was totally confused about where he could go to or who he should see about certain issues. And there were intersections of township and village authorities that were involved in his issue. And there's really nobody to say, I'm going to connect you with all the people you need, both with the township and the village. Having an administrative assistant that functions in both settings could be very useful. And I know that you all know and people know how things are going at the township and who does what, but not everybody in the community does. And having somebody that can make that connection, I think, would be very, very helpful.
Yeah.
Joni had said he on a regular basis had been fielding questions and making referrals. I
Right.
get stopped at Tom's with somebody complaining about something that is township business, so
I know all the
people
time.
really don't understand.
Yeah, and sometimes I find it hard to be like, well, I
Yeah,
don't really have anything to do with it, And it's like, you want to be able to help them, but you can't.
And I'd really, I hope that this can be the beginning of more collaboration between the teams, at least. And again, this is not taking into account the possibility of collaboration with the county and the school system. I've been talking with, we're not on this subject, but I've been talking based upon the things that Chris has mentioned. The idea of a grant position that would be funded by all 4 units and serve all 4. But that's in the very preliminary stages as well.
Well, I definitely think too, that there's a fairly vocal group of locals that want the village dissolved and combined with the township, and collaboration between the two, to me, has always seemed like an obvious option, like beyond that.
It's
Is that if we could
definitely-
just all get better at working together.
It's the easier option because
Which having a position that can do that is a way, because otherwise everybody's being asked to do something that isn't really part of their job, which isn't fair or appropriate at all. You can't expect someone to know and do things that isn't even in their job responsibilities. But yeah.
and just, to throw another complication, I'm visualizing this person having kind of a matrix to follow and being able to refer people to the utility authority, as well as to government units, would be helpful, and they might with the rate increase, be able to throw in a little bit of budget salary as well.
Right.
But, I mean, having an administrative assistant who could do copying and things like that as well for the utility authority.
Absolutely. So we have this next part is the justification for hiring part-time administrative assistant. So the position budget breakdown is total estimated budget for the position is $30,000. Funding sources and adjustments. Obviously, we just spoke about the attorney fees. We have a reduction in attorney fees expenditure of $10,000. The rationales there, I've already read that to you. We have an increase in salary contribution from the water fund in the amount of $18,744, and contribution from the Leelanau Township with potential for $10,000 to $20,000. So I'll just go over the overall financial justification. The proposed funding for the part-time administrative assistant position is a blend of internal budgetary adjustments and external contributions. The reduction in attorney fees and strategic allocation or reallocation of funds within the water fund, combined with the external support from the Leelanau Township, collectively ensures that the position is financially sustainable. This approach not only supports the new role, but also aligns with the village's broader objective of financial prudence and collaborative community engagement. The adjustment will more than cover, these adjustments will more than cover the adjusted budget and may contribute an increase in the contingency for the 2024-2025 budget. So that fiscal year that we spoke about. So there's the rationale, which, like I said, was a lot, but
Yeah.
once we got working on it.
I mean, in my mind, you've laid it out clearly. The three of us, are more familiar with the budget than some of the other trustees, and it may be more of a challenge to convince everyone that this is a feasible option for us to pursue. But, you know, in my mind, it makes sense. The big question mark is, we've been trying to find a part-time administrative assistant. Will we be able to find one?
I've got the perfect candidate.
Yeah.
I have interviewed, I think very, very good candidates for both of these positions if they were authorized. One of the reasons we wanted to present this to you rather than wait until the February meeting is, I'm just concerned that we might lose one or both of them if we don't act fairly soon to at least assure them that we're moving in this direction, if not offering them the employment. I'd be happy to talk about who these people are and give some of their qualifications. I just don't want to do that in a public meeting. It's not fair to them to do so.
Is the treasurer candidate interested in full-time?
Absolutely.
And then with the part-time administrative assistant, would part of their duties be working on minutes and
Yes.
completing packets for people?
Yes.
For planning also, not
Yes.
just regular committees?
In fact, the person that I have in mind for that has those qualifications in abundance.
I thought so,
yeah.
I just wanted to be sure, because
Yes,
I mean, to me, the value for that, two trustees who are not really receiving pay for doing that
Right.
work, as well as planning, who has desperately needed that for over a year.
Yeah, I've never, from the beginning, I've not liked the idea that, not that I didn't think it was being done competently, because it is, but it's just it's a burden on our individual trustees that I think, and commission members, that I don't think they should have to bear. What we want them to do is to come and participate in the meetings and lend their expertise to those subjects. We should have staff, and that's exactly why we may we may need to adjust the hours of when the meetings occur and that sort of thing, so we can have that person do that. But yeah, and in fact, one of the things that I've kind of thought we really need to add, and to be honest, the two people that I interviewed for these positions really were the reason it kind of catalyzed in my mind that I really would like to get both of these people on board, and that's why we kind of pursued this. But one thing that I'd like to add in terms that we're not doing now is I really think the township or the village needs a functioning entity, be it a chamber of commerce or downtown development authority or whatever it might be, to work on economic development and growth for the area. I think adding this position will allow me to essentially staff whatever that organization is and create minutes, agendas, and more importantly, things like, here's the manual for how to run this particular event. And we can pass that off to the chairperson every time it happens and have some consistency and take the burden off busy business owners from dealing with the administrative aspect of a chamber of commerce or a downtown development authority. So that's the other thing I have in mind in adding to that part-time role.
And then probably the website too.
That I haven't
Managing.
thought about. I'm still trying to get a handle on. That's one of the things on my list of things to do is to get a handle on how that's all done and how that might be improved. But yes, that could be possible as well.
Yeah, I just know it's difficult. Like, I mean, and to me, it is also like where does that? It's essentially a job to maintain a website, and whose responsibility is that now? And that's part of the problem, I think, is that it's a lot to do something like that, and to be keeping up with it. And because that isn't necessarily happening, that's why the public, I mean, constantly, every meeting, they're like, the website. Well, we know, but that takes a lot of time. Somebody has to be able to have the time dedicated to do that, and that's not really a clerk's job. It's not necessarily a manager's job. It's not necessarily a treasurer's job. Like, it's really an administrative task. So I just,
In expanding the treasurer's position from essentially half-time to full-time, do we have a good, robust list of what
For example, I
activities
think I would have the treasurer staffing the village council and finance committee meetings, for example, in addition to the treasurer role. That'd be a start, and perhaps having that person do the website. I don't know. Trust me, there's plenty of work that can be done.
Yeah, that was what got me thinking, is if there would be additional time. Now, it would be a learning curve for me to take on. I would have no clue, but I'm trainable.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I think we've got two very viable candidates if we go down this road.
So are both of you comfortable in making a recommendation that Jim brings us to the full council in February?
I fully support this, but was what you were saying is that you need to make action on this before village council meeting? Because I mean, if we need to do that, what do we need to do to make that happen? Because I don't want, if you have great candidates and this proposal all makes sense and you've paid for yourself, for these positions, I don't want them to go, oh, never mind, I took a job elsewhere, sorry.
Right.
And to be able to give notice to their employers.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and that takes time.
Oh, correct, yeah.
Yeah, I honestly, I'd like, if I had my way, I would have offered the positions to both of them 2 weeks ago. But obviously we can't do that. The only alternative I could think of would be to have a special meeting that considered just this issue with a recommendation from this committee.
I mean, I would say do that.
I would be willing to
I
support
would,
that
because,
as well.
and honestly, even if, I mean, we want the full council there, but even if some weren't able to attend, as long as you have a quorum, so
Yeah.
that we can move forward. I mean, to me, you've made this so logical and obvious. I mean, I do agree there may be some council members who aren't as fluent with the budget, that it's more challenging to understand, but I think that even short of that knowledge, reading through this makes sense. I mean, it pays for itself and we have the work to do, and that makes us money also when you don't have things falling through the cracks because you have enough staff to get it all done in time.
And I think we can present this in a full board, full village council meeting in a much shorter period of time. We wanted to be very thorough in presenting this to you as the finance committee. But I think we could, if it was a single item special meeting, I think we could do this in 30 minutes.
I think Susan is still in town for 2 weeks.
Yeah,
So-
yes, I think you're right.
So trying to get something scheduled as soon as feasibly possible.
Right. What are you doing tomorrow? No, I'm kidding.
Well, seriously, is there?
Tomorrow or Friday?
I could do Friday, I can't do tomorrow.
Friday.
I think
I'm pretty available.
Friday.
Yeah, Friday is better for me, just because
Friday.
tomorrow I'm pretty sure it's my appointment day, so.
Why don't we try to set it for Friday at what? I mean, I don't think I have anything myself, but, you know.
11? What would work for you, Laura?
Morning.
Morning?
Anytime
10 or
before
10
3.
or 10,
10.
10 or 11?
Yeah, anytime, as long as it's
That's
before.
why I set it, yeah, because that gives us enough time to do a special meeting notice. So Friday, let's try Friday at 10.
Okay.
Okay. And you'll contact all the others to.
Yep.
Okay.
And if everybody's in
Then we'll
You get
put
enough
this
commitment.
document in the Dropbox for public to see, or?
Sure.
That would
Okay.
make
Yeah.
sense.
I just think that
Yeah.
you should do that so that the public doesn't
Yeah,
feel like
yeah.
we didn't talk about it at regular council and now there's a special meeting and now they've hired new people and nobody even knew it was happening. So that's, I just think like, get it in a Dropbox
Yeah, we'll
somewhere.
have it-
Even if it's not the version you present at the meeting, like if you
No, this
present a
will
Trump
be the
meeting, it would
version
be
we
this one,
present at the
okay.
meeting, unless there's tweaks to this that you'd like to see. This is the version that we'll present at the special meeting.
I mean, I do think one thing you could add that we don't know for sure, but like what we had talked about the last meeting with the EV chargers, it's not a ton of money, but if we do that, which we said we were going to, if we achieve that, that's $3,000 that right now is being spent on electrical bills and is
out of the
therefore,
general fund.
yeah, out of the
We
general
didn't
fund.
even consider that.
And that would be a gain because we won't have to spend it anymore.
So that could still go under number 7, expenditure reduction.
Right.
We could add that.
Because I think that I'm gonna be able to achieve that 3,000. I mean, I really don't think that I won't. I've raised a lot more money than that before.
We'll
For
add that.
things that aren't as much advertising. I mean,
We'll
it's
add
a
that to the
year-round
analysis.
advertisement.
Yeah, and if you want to include NLTUA and township contribution, that it might not be necessary.
Add it after,
because it'd be small.
I'd like to.
I don't want them to feel like they're pressured
Yeah.
either.
Since I've had a conversation with the township supervisor
Yeah,
on that.
that's probably better
I
not
felt
to.
comfortable including
Yeah.
that, but beyond that, I'm
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
Well, and I already know like some township residents, when they see this, might be ruffled feathers, like to see that we're counting on their contribution without knowing for sure. But
That's why we didn't put it in as a.
for sure, yeah.
Even that it's been formally requested.
Yeah.
Right.
It's been discussed.
Yeah.
And frankly, if they decide not to do that, we're gonna find another source.
Yeah.
I think it's important enough to do this that we'll find another source if we have to.
Okay, so with that, your budget worksheet, as I mentioned, Jim and I were talking about it because we were working through this so much,
Yes, you were.
does reflect these positions. However, We haven't had a chance to go through and do our final scrub on it and, dot our i's and cross our t's. So, I don't want to go through it line by line with you today, but it's informational. One thing I do want to touch on, the last time we met, Laura, you pointed out the holiday pay was over budget. And I did go, and I didn't have a chance to send out an email, but I did go in and look at that. I inadvertently, when someone had taken their time off, and I know which employee it was, when I go into payroll, I have to hit the correct account, and I hit the wrong account to account for their time off request. So
you just moved it.
that set it off by 600 and whatever dollars
Yeah.
it was. So, because it didn't make sense to me, but those numbers are very close. So it's like 7194, 7193, So, I haven't fixed it. You'll still see it in this budget. I'm gonna go in and correct that.
Yeah, just adjust it.
Yeah, and then I did have the letter from Treasury, if you wanted to see that, where they did, after we last met, we were saying, well, geez, do we do a budget amendment? Do we adopt a 4-month?
I think you
What
provided
is-
that.
I did in my clerk's report.
Oh, okay. I know I had seen
But,
it.
Dale from Treasury, he did come back and say that we could amend our budget, including expenditures through June, or we could adopt a 16-month. And Jim and I were talking, we're not ready to adopt a 16-month. We're hoping to have that time to initiate the rate study, work on the CIP through, March, April, May.
We'll know how many employees we have.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So we're using this budget worksheet as a tool for what we'll do is create amendments that are reflected. And in talking with our Tyler Technologies, who oversees our accounting software, essentially this will be adopted into the system and we'll close it out. But when it comes time for the audit, our auditor will be able to review a 16-month time span.
Okay.
So it won't have to be, there will be no need for 2 separate audits. It'll be one audit for that time span. So I think that's kind of my understanding. We're gonna, this is preliminary. We're gonna go, Jim and I will go through and scrub it out, but we did add those positions as the full-time treasurer and the part-time administrative assistant. You'll see is in here now. And we'd like a little more time to go through this. And then what I will do to prepare, and I think makes the most sense, is I will prepare them as budget amendments by department. So it'll show what that amendment is, what the increase, what the amendment is to the revenues.
Which is what you did the most recent set of
Yeah,
amendments.
I'll try to lay it out real clear.
By fund, yeah.
By fund, and that'll simplify, hopefully, for the
Do we
board.
need to meet formally again before the council meeting, which is what they're.
I don't think so, unless you'd like to. I essentially we're put the finest point on it. We're taking, for the 4-month budget, we're going to ask, budget amendment, we're going to ask you to approve, I believe in February.
Yes,
Yeah.
it'll be our.
Is essentially a flat budget from just 4 months of continuation, plus these additions that we presented today.
Okay.
That's it. So.
Well, we have to talk if we're doing a wage increase. We had a discussion about that too. So what that'll be
Well, when I s-
included. Yes.
Well, yeah, I'll likely, we'll talk about
Okay,
that, but
yeah. That's Jim's job. Things like that.
But the other thing that I want to say is that this is what you deserve to get. This is what you deserve to get as a village council when we're considering important decisions. And we've paid the first installment for the agenda software program. This is the kind of thing you will get, kind of summary that you get presented even in a more organized way or differently organized way that I think is really conducive to understanding what staff is presenting and having the meat of it right there in front. So this is what, like I said, this is what you deserve as a village council, to get this level of detail when we're asking you to make this large decision.
I think it helps a lot. I mean, it has the answers to most of the questions that I could think that people might ask, and you don't have to look into it further or find it later, you know, and then try to get back to people.
That's the idea. And in fact, what I'm hoping we end up, you'll be getting the agenda in enough time that you're going to even be able to come back and say, hey, I read this. Here's an issue that you didn't cover that I really need. I'm going to be asking. Be prepared to answer it at that question before or at the village council meeting. And again, that I think you're entitled to have that as a village council member.
No, not to mention that it makes our jobs easier.
Oh, yeah.
And it makes my job easier too.
Well, and it should make conversations smoother too, discussions, because if you have some, you know, ahead of time, you're more prepared when you get there, instead of going, oh, I just thought of it while I was sitting here.
Right.
So,
And I can tell you without much fear of contradiction, there is a desire out there for some form of organization that does economic development and business development and tourism for the village. There's definitely a desire out there. I've had 2 meetings just last week that focused on that issue. So I expect another one coming up here Friday. So.
Not at 10 o'clock.
Not at 10 o'clock.
Yeah, that'll be a different agenda. So, any questions on the plan for the 4-month budget? The proposal to add positions will be on agenda for this Friday if we're successful in scheduling that. And then really the proposed budget amendments are what we were just talking about. The one thing that I added as new business is when we approved the purchasing and sales policy, naming the manager as the purchasing agent, we don't have any alternative in that current policy. And so I think that we need to rethink or amend or update based on, particularly when we have a treasurer on board, you know, who else has some authority to purchase on behalf of the village. I mean, we just need an alternate or a delegated responsibility so that everything does not reside with one person. We have.
And just in case.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just.
Jim's on an island somewhere.
Well,
I think the better way to do that is to have an overall. One thing that we did at the city of Marshall is there was an administrative authority resolution that said in the absence of the village manager, the clerk has this, you know, can exercise the authority of the village manager. But it's not just limited to purchasing.
Yeah, which is,
and I can
as
prepare,
long as there's some provision for, you know, in the absence of, you know, does everything fall to the village president? Or can the DPW superintendent have authority to do something, or the clerk, or.
what I'd recommend is we have that would go from village manager, village clerk, to village president. In that order. And until, you know, I had two very good candidates, but I'm not sure I wanted at this point
To delegate
say I
something.
would delegate
Yeah.
authority to them yet, but yeah.
So,
So-
yeah, as long as there's some provision, it
And
was reinforced with the situation with Lloyd Austin, being in the
You know,
hospital.
it's funny that you should say that because I was just listening to that on the way driving in, and I knew about him generally.
Uh-huh.
He had an unbelievably amazing career, what he's done, and to have that be the thing that I don't know,
Yeah.
if it leads to his demise as a public servant, that'd be really tragic. But
Yeah, kind of
Interesting.
like Colin Powell, the last thing you remember is he lied to the United Nations about weapons of mass destruction, which is totally unfair, but yeah, which is nothing related to village business, but still.
But you're right, that is something that needs to be, I'll prepare an administrative delegation resolution and have that at February. I think February meeting is soon enough. I don't know
Yeah,
that I really want to have that special meeting focused solely on this issue.
And I think having a single agenda item makes sense, so that it's clear that, this is not just leftover stuff. This is, we have a specific reason for needing a special meeting. It's not that we can't get our act together. It's
Right.
because the timing is such that we need to move on this. So,
The definition of a special meeting.
yeah,
Well, and the shorter it is, the easier it is to get all the trustees to agree to come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and if you need to adjust the time a little bit, but if we can get it, I'd like to have at least 5, and, if we could have the full council, that would be ideal. But I'd like to see at least 5 or 6, not just because it's a significant
Yes, it is.
thing.
It's a big decision.
Well, I saw Susan at New Bohemian on Sunday, so she was out and about.
Yeah,
And
and I saw her yesterday, and she's graduated from a Walker, so she's
Oh, good.
she's not so sure that she's going to give it up just yet with these kind of
I
sidewalk conditions.
would
But,
not either.
but she's been through physical therapy and graduated, so, but I know that she had just 2 weeks left before they leave for Florida, so Friday may work for her, fingers crossed. So, any other comment from trustees or staff? Don't throw anything else at us. We're open for public comment. All right, I don't see anyone unmuting, so we can stand adjourned at, Laura, can you read the,
11.
11:11.
okay, that's